My name is Daniel, and this is the Engineering Success Podcast, Episode 8. As you'll notice, this is our first weekly episode update to the Engineering Success Podcast. I am going to try to, in between each interview, mix in a shorter episode with a couple recurring segments that I'm trying out today. So I hope you enjoy them. And also, I'm going to, as always, at the end, close out by answering some career questions. Now, as always, if you want to support the podcast, make sure that if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you give the podcast 5 stars. If you're listening on Anchor, make sure that you like the podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. It's telling everybody that they need to listen to the podcast, and always consider sharing the podcast with somebody that you think might benefit from it. Now, before we get into the first official segment of the podcast, I wanted to give a quick opportunity to shout out our supporters this week. Yes, that's right. Just kidding. We have no supporters this week. But if you want to get a shout out at the beginning of every single episode, $10 a month, you can actually do this straight from the Anchor app. There's an opportunity to support the podcast. $10 a month gets you a shout out in every single episode, every single month, every single week. $5 gets you a one-time shout out. So if you want to support the podcast, I'd really appreciate it. All right. Now, before we get into the first official segment of the podcast, I said that again, I want to talk a little bit about something I've kind of been struggling with recently. It's kind of a personal conflict I've had. And I know, bringing personal things to the podcast, but I've been advertising the podcast on my LinkedIn, which I think is, in my opinion, it's a career podcast. I feel like that's the optimal place to advertise the podcast. The problem is I'm afraid that I'm going to become a LinkedIn influencer. That's like literally the last thing I want to be. I think that whenever it comes to influencers, you've got your Instagram and your Twitter influencers, and you have some weird Facebook pages, but then you have LinkedIn influencers, and I don't want to be lumped in with the LinkedIn influencers. They're all it's all the same thing, It's one line of text, then a space, and then another line of text, and then another line of text, and likely it's just them being a decent human being and feeling like they need to let their entire LinkedIn network know that they were a decent human being. But the worst one for me is, again, all these stories, but the worst thing I've ever seen on LinkedIn is, next time you see a super viral post on LinkedIn and you see a bunch of people interacted with it, super popular, search the exact same, first 7 words of that post on LinkedIn, and you'll see that hundreds of other people have reposted the exact same post, and some of them are also getting thousands of people engaging with them. Yes, people are literally plagiarizing feel-good, brag-about-me stories from other people's LinkedIns on their own LinkedIns, which I think is crazy. But again, LinkedIn is about networking. It's about connecting with other people. So I guess to each their own. But for me personally, I just struggle with the concept of, overly self-promoting, which is why I'm kind of nervous to promote the podcast on LinkedIn, because, I don't want to be that guy that everybody's like, oh, so-and-so is posting about themselves again on LinkedIn. But anyways, that's just the personal conundrum I'm going through. But I think for now, I'm going to continue sharing on LinkedIn, and then the coolest thing that I've been doing lately is responding to people's career questions on Reddit, and I found that that's driven people to the podcast. So we're up to about 50 listeners, for anybody who's curious, 50 listeners on my podcasting websites, and we're up to about another 50 on YouTube, sometimes more than that, and I don't know how many of them are watching the podcast all the way through, but very exciting to hear that more and more people are listening to the podcast. All right, let's get into our first official segment of the podcast. This one is called Stories with Daniel, Quit Your Job Edition. All right, so what I've done is I've scoured the interwebs and I've found stories. One story. This is a weekly. We'll do this. either every week or every 2 weeks. We found a story of somebody that I think should quit their job. So this one was posted on Reddit's computer science career questions. So similar to engineering, a lot of engineers go into computer science. Um, the title of the post on Reddit was "I'm a software dev at a startup, and I'm so miserable." And they go on to say, non-tech co-founders think I'm too slow. Work 15 hours a day for 2 months, no weekends off. I stopped that 2 weeks ago, but I'm getting really disillusioned. I have no mentors. I'm a new dev, first job. Project management is poor, and CEO wants fast delivery on everything. I've been making a lot of mistakes lately. All I do is wait for the day to end. I'm so unhappy I could die. I'm so unhappy. Okay, here's my advice to you. Quit your job. Yes, you heard it. Quit your job. Obviously, the leadership at this company is out of touch with the execution side of the company. So definitely, definitely start looking for an environment where you're not having to work 15 hours a day without taking off weekends. That's just absolutely insane. 15 times 7. If my engineering degree did anything for me, is 120 minus 15, right? Yeah, which is 105. 105 hours a week, that's absolute insanity. Nope. That's not a good work environment. And I know that you said that you stopped doing that work schedule, but you have no mentorship, no leadership, no people helping build you up. Find a place where you can at least have that and have opportunities for growth. There's plenty of great employers out there. Computer science is in high demand. You'll find a better place to work at. All right, and in contrast to that, we're going to go into our positive career story of the week. Title is, this is also from Reddit, or I think it's Ask Engineers. A positive story for those with no internship experience or a mediocre GPA. They go, hello all, I have recently graduated in June with a bachelor's in electrical and computer engineering and was expecting a long and depressing slog of job hunting. To my surprise, I have recently been hired after only around 10 applications by a large and well-known computer engineering company. For some context, I have no internship experience and a 3.18 GPA. I had basically spent the last year of my classes depressed and stressed out. You can check my earlier posts to find plenty of proof of this. I guess I'll have to do that next. That I wouldn't make it, wouldn't find a job, and was really struggling to find purpose. I'm still trying to accept that this is real, and even though I'm finishing up the last of my onboarding paperwork, it still feels like a bit of a fever dream. I just wanted to give some positive stories to this subreddit because I know that from a student's perspective, this subreddit can often give the impression that you are in for a 6-month, 200 plus application slog that's going to suck you dry both financially and emotionally. You don't know what opportunity is waiting for you around the corner, so stick it out and keep chugging until you're done, even if it takes longer than you'd like or your resume isn't as beautiful as you'd hope. I think that's great for this person. Obviously, I wouldn't advertise advertise skipping an internship, but the thing is that a lot of people had their internships canceled in 2020, and if I transport me back in time, if I'd been graduating around the same time as this person, I also would have had my most major internship experience canceled. So that's good news to know that companies are understanding and aware of that. And I think that's also just a great point about the importance of opportunity cost. I mean, it's, if you haven't had an internship and you're applying for jobs, that's behind you. That's the reality, and you have to do your best. So that's where being strategic and doing your best at being very precise, not just completely shotgunning out 200 plus applications, but instead putting together some really solid applications that are the best you can for positions that you think are actually a good fit for you, can result in you getting a job. So I'd be really interested in hearing more from this person about how they exactly got their job and what they did. So maybe I'll follow up with them. But again, that's really good news and really encouraging for people that might be in a similar situation. Companies, especially really good companies, the best companies you want to work for are often sometimes the most understanding as well because they have a really good understanding of the reality. All right. Now let's kick into a ad break, and after that, I'll go into career questions. What's up, everybody? It's Daniel. I just wanted to let you know that later on you're going to hear me say problems or solutions when I mean comfort or solutions. So listen through the podcast and you hear me sound like an idiot. Thanks. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing the same ad or any ad if I'm still getting ads. Now let's get into the career questions. The first one is titled Job Search Advice for Upcoming New Graduate Civil Engineering. Question asker goes on to say, Hi there, just wondering if anybody could share their experience or wisdom on approaching the job search as a new graduate in the civil engineering industry. So obviously, I, not a civil engineer, have decided to weigh in with my opinion. All right, carry on. As of now, I have the option of returning to my previous co-op employer upon graduating this coming spring. They're a good company with good people and good management. However, their line of work isn't exactly something that I am interested in doing over the long term. It's a mix of office work and site work, but there's quite a lot of traveling for site work and the work itself on site is exhausting. I'm more interested in the design aspects of civil engineering, particularly in structures. I have good grades, but no internship or co op for design specifically. For those being in my shoes in the past, again, not me, but I have an opinion, what would be an effective way to navigate the job search process to eventually land a design role in the civil engineering industry? Should I return to my co op employer and stick it out as I perform the job search concurrently, or is performing the job search for design while being unemployed still okay and not too detrimental to my value on the market? I am from Canada, by the way. Hello, Canada. Thank you in advance for reading and thoughts. I really appreciate your insights and wisdom from your personal experiences. All right. So, again, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a civil engineer and I have not experienced exactly what you're experiencing, but working for a company that has a construction arm and an engineering design arm and talking to people that are in leadership of the company, my understanding is that your experience doing hands-on work, working in the site, taking it back to the office, is really valuable experience for a lot of consulting firms. A lot of consulting firms would look very highly upon you for having that experience because you're going to have a greater understanding of how the things you design as a design engineer are then going to be implemented. And a lot of engineering goes in they call design build. So then the same company or the same joint venture of companies will design the final stages of engineering and then execute through construction. And your knowledge as somebody who's executed in the field and construction is very valuable to that. In addition, engineering companies will also do what's called constructability reviews during the design phases, where they'll bring in outside people that are, outside of engineering, so other internal personnel, but that are construction, like superintendents or field engineers, to provide their input on the engineering design process. And somebody with that design experience, like yourself, will have a good chance of being able to represent yourself and contribute in those discussions. So I say all that to say, when you are applying for design roles, make sure to emphasize that and make sure to sell yourself on your knowledge from implementing things in the field and how that would make you a really good design engineer. Include it in your cover letter. Make sure you reference it, your communication skills and your interest in design, and maybe your technologies that you're familiar with reading out in the field that you would then be working with in the design role. Emphasize those things on your resume. So, and then hopefully you'll be putting yourself in a good position to land a good design role. So I know it's not the full answer to your question. I will search through my network to find somebody that's been in a similar situation and maybe try to get their input. But again, that's my 2 cents. And as for Should you return to your co-op employer? I personally am of the school of I'd rather have money than not have money. So if money is a decision maker, I'd say take the opportunity to make money. And then additionally, again, it's up to you, but really, I would say that any experience is really good experience, and I wouldn't. And if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't feel bad about continuing to work with that employer while searching for an opportunity that better fits what your goal is. Because in the end, if you decide to leave the company, I mean, you can just tell them, hey, I was looking for more of a design role and I just can't get that here. But I really enjoyed working here. You say it yourself. You think it's a good company with good people and good management. So you can say, hey, I really enjoyed working here, and maybe I could see myself coming back here at another stage in my career. But right now, I'm really interested in developing as a designer, and I think that'll make me just an all around better engineer. So again, you're not really going to burn any bridges there by leaving to pursue something that you're more passionate about. Um, yeah, so that's my advice to you. All right, here's the next question. This one's from the that one was from the R Engineering Careers subreddit, and this one is from R Ask Engineers. And this one was posted by user DJ Tasty. I just had to include that because I think that that's a really nice Reddit username. All right, so I'm going to read their question first, and then they edited the question to include their feedback and the things that they've gathered from other people, and I'm going to read that afterwards. So, their initial question was, I'm a mechanical engineer who graduated from university 6 years ago and currently work as a senior engineer at my firm. Our job as engineers is to solve problems, take into account multidisciplinary issues when designing projects, and to anticipate any problems that might arise. Our job is literally to overthink things and be control freaks. I take great care into my work, and this skill set got me where I am today. But my problem is that I accidentally bring it along with me to everything else I care about and want to have work out in my favor, mostly relationships. I'm sure you all know about overthinking things when it comes to relationships, so I won't bore you with those details. But how do you deal with getting paid to overthink at your job and having to turn it off when you're done working? Any tips or tricks? Thanks. And then they go on to say, well, actually, first off, I would say that I'm good at this, but then again, I have an engineering careers podcast. So am I hypocritical for answering this question? I don't think so, because again, I deal with the same issue, and in certain aspects of my life around relationships, I'm very careful to avoid doing this exact thing that they've described. So I'll share my experience after reading their takeaways. Their first takeaway is learn to shut up. That's a great tip for me. I talk a lot. I would really benefit from that, and I'm working on it. I'm constantly working on realizing that it's not always about getting your opinion out, getting your idea out, getting your solution out, getting your thoughts out. Sometimes it's better just to listen and wait and think. A good old 10-second rule. Next one is distract my body and thoughts with something else. Great. I think that it's great to have hobbies, and I think that's where they're going with that, but that's a good piece of advice. 3, try to see positives for every negative. Again, that's a really good thing for engineers. We're always looking for solutions, so we're always picking out what's wrong with something and the little things that could be better. And I do this all the time, especially when observing other people's driving, so I have to be a little bit better about that. And also, I mean, again, we're very process driven, very efficiency oriented, so learning to accept that things don't always have to be done in the most efficient way, and learning to accept the little delays and enjoy the little pauses that we have in life. 4, possibly hire a therapist for when I need to vent away, or my buddy over a few beers. Yeah, I personally will say that I've really benefited from again, I haven't gone for extensive therapy, but I have seen a therapist before, and it was really helpful for me. So recommend that always. And your buddy over a few beers, yes, it's always great to structure specific time where you can rant about the things that have been upsetting you or bothering you. That's a better atmosphere than constantly bringing up around the people that you care about. And lastly, their takeaway is accept my thoughts for what they are, and that it's okay to have them. And that's great. I mean, we're engineers. We think the way that we do, and we have people that are like-minded to us that think that same way that might resonate to that, and that's okay. But also, there are people that might not appreciate as much our mentality and our way of going about things. So, and they go on to say, I hope this post has helped anyone else that is also struggling with mental problems rather than physics problems. So, I guess one of the takeaways for me is, I guess this is kind of relationship advice, is one of the things that I've personally taken away recently, and it's been a great thing for me, is that this is in dealing with my fiance and also in other relationships, is whenever people tell me things that they're going through and things that they're experiencing, my mentality used to be always to just go straight to the solution. But sometimes, and that's our engineering mind, but sometimes people aren't always looking for solutions. Sometimes they're looking for comfort or support or, something on that line. So one thing that I've learned to do is ask, hey, would you like me to help you figure this out, or would you just like some support right now? Or as simple as problems or solutions. And I will tell you that has worked absolute wonders for me in improving my interactions with people and improving my relationships. So I recommend it to others if you are struggling with similar things. That phrase, are you looking for problems or solutions, has done wonders for me, and I recommend it to everyone. All right. Well, that has done it for this short episode of the Engineering Success Podcast. This is our other bi-weekly episode. We have started our new segments. We started our Quit Your Job segment. We started our Positive Career News segment, and we closed out with some career questions. So I think that this was a successful episode, and if you think so too, make sure to like, subscribe. If you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube, make sure to give us 5 stars. And as always, I will catch up with you hopefully next week with a interview.
I'm miscommunicating. I just made a pilot, then they threw me on the stations. I'm not complaining, my thoughts get complicated, I cannot explain in layman's. Never losing focus because I ain't chasing payments. Still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries, thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify, they put me on the station.